So let's get started. What we are going to do is you're going to create a folder. So let's take Streamlit Apps. I'm just calling it as Streamlit Apps for now. So I'm assuming that you already have Anaconda in your machines. So some basic packages like Python, Pandas, NumPy, and let's say Plotly, and all these will be available by default under Anaconda distribution. So I'm assuming that you are working on top of Anaconda distribution. So here, if you check out, this is the Anaconda UI, wherein you can start with Jupyter Notebook. So you can say launch Jupyter Notebook from here, and it will launch a nice Jupyter Notebook for you, wherein you can start typing in Python code and all those here. Uh, and you can create Jupyter notebooks. So you can go and create a new Jupyter notebook and type in your code in Jupyter notebook itself. So I'm selecting Python 3. So I can say import import pandas as PD, and so this is Jupyter notebook, wherein all the code you will write it in different blocks and then execute. For example, if you want to read a CSV file, let me read a CSV file from a URL. So URL is equal to this. So I'll just say data is equal to pd dot read underscore CSV URL. So let's say if I have a data with me, I can quickly read it, and then I can just look at the data here. So typically we install Anaconda, and then we invoke Anaconda Navigator, and then launch Jupyter Notebook, and then you can work on your Python code. That is one flow that we typically do. Moment you want to move from Jupyter Notebook, you want to create some applications using Python, Jupyter Notebook might not be the best IDE to work with. So you might have to because this is mostly code based, block based IDE. So but if you want to go for a full-fledged project wherein you create web applications and all, it might not be a best place to get started. This IDE will not help you much. So we have to go with a lot of other IDEs. So for example, you have PyCharm, which is for which you need to, I think the basic version is free. You can community version you can use, comes with certain limitations, or you can go with something like Spider, or multiple other platforms are available. But by default these days we use an application called VSCode. So VSCode is free and widely used across OS. So even in Mac you have this VSCode. I think for Ubuntu also, I guess, I'm not sure, but I guess it will be there. But in Windows as well, the support for VSCode is quite good, and typically these days a lot of people are using VSCode, especially if you want to create a proper full-fledged application. So for that reason, this IDE, so this is an IDE, so this IDE is much better. So we can use this IDE. So you can click on this launch button here moment you install, or you can install VS Code separately as well. But moment you install Anaconda Navigator, I think comes by default, or it'll automatically install it the moment you launch it. So by default it will ask you certain setups initially to set the color theme and all. So let's say I just mark it as done. So this will be the UI that you will typically have it. What we have a lot of menus here. So for example, in the left hand side there is a folder menu. So when you open a folder, whatever files you have in that particular folder will be available here. And so for example, the folder that I opened, the folder that I recently opened, I have one file here in this particular folder. So it will display all the files within that folder. Apart from that, you have search, and if you want to install any extensions, you can install them. Go to settings, and then a lot of extensions available. Apart from that, you can also run code here directly, or there are a lot of other ways to run. So what I'm doing is, once I've installed VS Code, I've already created a folder in my desktop, right? I have to point to that folder from my VS Code. So here, let me do it from beginning. So let's say either I can open VS Code through Anaconda Navigator, or you can separately install VS Code, which comes as a desktop application. So moment I do this, I have to go to File and then Open Folder. Okay, so once I say Open Folder, it will allow me with the File Explorer. All I have to do is click on this folder and say Select Folder. So it will open files in that particular folder. So I have created an empty folder, and I want to create my first file inside it. So all I'm doing is, I'm just right clicking here and then saying New File. So for example, if I say readme.md, so I'm giving the extensions here myself. So readme.md is a markdown file. So when I click on it, I can start typing in here in this panel. I can start typing in. I've created another file called requirements.txt. So requirements.txt is a file that we typically create. So you take any GitHub repository. So let's say I take any open source GitHub repository. Let's say github.com pandas. Let's say I take a pandas library. Any library that well maintained repository, if you take, there will be certain files by default. So for example, here you see it is available as requirements-dev.txt. Any software or any code that is there, which we typically do it through Python, that particular folder should have what packages that particular team has used. So for example, they have said we are using bottleneck package, and the version should be more than or equal to 1.3.6. So they will mention all the packages. So requirements.txt or requirements-dev, depending on how you want to name it. But here, this file will be there irrespective, and there will be a readme file as well. So readme.md file will be there, wherein they will give a lot of instructions about this, how to use this package, and how to use this particular code block. So first thing that we will do is have requirements.txt, and then make sure that you have this application Streamlit available. So by default, if it is not there, by default, if the package Streamlit is not there, someone will able to install it. So how to use this file, I will talk about it in a minute. So before that, so let's say I have another file created. So let's say I create another file called app.py. Let's say I create a Python file. So moment you see I use .py, it is changing the icon to Python icon. For .md, it is having I icon, mostly information icon. For requirements.txt, it is giving a list like icon here. So based on the extension, file extension, it will change the icon color. So for the file app.py, it is giving the icon color as the Python logo itself. So for example, let's say if I have a Python file, let's say I create import pandas as pd, or let's say I read a file, and whatever code that I wrote in my Jupyter notebook, let me copy it here, and then let's say I use print statement to print it. So in Jupyter notebook, you saw all these output coming below the cell itself, the charts and then the data frame and all coming below the cell itself. Whereas in VS Code, we can create Jupyter Notebook in VS Code as well. But moment you create .py file, Python files, you don't see the output here. You cannot run it here itself. All you have to run using this file name app.py. So there are multiple ways using which one can run this application. So you can go to that particular folder. You can open command prompt here. So for example, let me open a command prompt here. So I can go to desktop. I can copy this location. So I can just say cd. I can go to this location and then I can say python app.py. So this is one way of running. So I run this Python file by going into the command prompt in that particular folder. So in that particular folder I have app.py and I say python app.py. So this is how you run a Python file, right? So when I run this, it will execute the code within that and then it will print the output in the command prompt itself. So in Jupyter Notebook, you are seeing this output here, whereas in command prompt, you will see it. The way you run this is using Python function, the Python command, and then the file name. So you will, whatever print statements you have below itself, it will print all this. So this is one way of running this Python file. In in VS Code, you can go to a menu called terminal and say new terminal. New terminal, so the whatever you see here, right? New terminal. So moment you click here, you will see a window coming in the bottom. So there will be a lot of windows in which we will be working with. Terminal is one very often you will be working with, especially for this course. We'll be using terminal a lot. So here, I repeat, you'll be going to terminal and create a new terminal. So by default, it opens a PowerShell. You can open a command prompt as well. So in the right hand side here, you see your arrow button here. So you can click. So in the terminal, you can open a git bash. You can open a command prompt. If you have Ubuntu WSL installed, you can use Ubuntu terminal as well here. So here I'm clicking on command prompt. So by default it opens PowerShell, which is not that user friendly to work with for our applications at least. So I can open a command prompt. So rather than me opening command prompt here separately like this, I'm opening command prompt here in this particular UI. How did I do it? I'll repeat. I'll go to terminal, new terminal, and I'll go to this icon here and I change this to command prompt. So there is a PowerShell, there is command prompt. I can create multiple command prompts as well. So for example, I can go ahead and create another command prompt. So one command prompt I can run something and another command prompt I can run another application. So you can create multiple terminals. We call it as terminals, or multiple command prompts you can create, like how you do it here, right? So once you create a command prompt, you can create another tab and create another command prompt, right? So likewise, so you can create another command prompt here. So like how you do it with typical command prompt, even here in terminal, you can create multiple, and if you want to delete any of the command prompt, you have option to delete them as well. So we'll be opening the command prompt. Since it is within this VS Code environment, by default it will open in that particular folder. So earlier we cd'd to that particular location, to that particular folder, but since we are working in this particular folder, which is Streamlit Apps, by default when you open command prompt, it will be in that folder. So when I say dir, I'll able to see the files within that, which is app.py, readme.md, requirements.txt. That is what you see all this here, right? Let's say I have this command prompt. I can say python app.py. So like what we did with the original command prompt, right? I'm calling this Python file. Basically I'm executing this Python file, so it will run one line at a time, and wherever there is print statements, it will print those respective values here. So this is one way of running a Python file. So these are the UIs, or these are the windows that we will typically use in VS Code. There are a lot of other windows you can run it through this UI as well, but slowly you can try those. For now, this terminal way of running Python application should be good enough for you. Okay, and very first thing that we will do is whatever additional packages that we have. So for example, if you want to mention that I'm using pandas, which will be there for in certain machines, might not be there, but whatever packages that you are using, let's say I'm going to use NLTK, which might not be there or might be there in certain machines. So whatever packages that you are importing in your code, so here I'm importing pandas. So whatever packages you're using, make sure that you mention that in requirements.txt, and if required, mention it along with the version as well, like what I was showing you. So here this team, if you check out, they said what version they are using, so you can use equal to or greater than or less than. So there are a lot of ways to mention the package number, the version. So in requirements.txt, one package for each line you will mention, and then first thing that you will do is pip install -r requirements.txt. So I will put I'll save all these commands. Install dependency packages. So now, moment I say pip install -r, the file name, which is requirements.txt, so it will check whether those packages are already there. If not, it will create one. So it says it will also install the dependency packages. Pandas itself depends on various other packages. For example, it depends on NumPy. So it will make sure that it installs it along with its dependencies. So whatever packages that are required, these three packages we are using it. Internally, these packages will use multiple other packages. So all those, it will check if it is there or not. If it is not there, it will install them so that you can import them. So for example, I can say import Streamlit as st. So the way we import pandas as pd, I can import Streamlit as st. So let me remove this print statement for now, and I'm going to say st. So we are going to use this package a lot, using its alias st. So st dot, you can minimize this. So st dot, there are a lot of things that are available within this. So these are all functions that are there. For example, you can create a select box, which is a drop down. You can create a scatter plot. You can create a slider. So there are a lot of options available under st. So let's say I start with st dot header, and let me say let me give a value. Let's say cricket analysis. Since I'm reading a CSV file which is about matches, I'm going to give a title called st.header. So we need to first run this file to see how does it look like. So I'm creating a header with the name cricket analysis. So let's see how to run our first Streamlit application, which contains only a header for now. Okay, it contains only the header. Internally it reads a data file, but what we are going to display to the user is just the header for now. So the way we run this is Streamlit is the keyword. Streamlit. So moment you install Streamlit package, which I think by default will come when you install Anaconda. So you can say Streamlit space run app.py. So this is Streamlit's way of running this particular file. So here Streamlit is a command, run is a command. The function, the file name alone you have to mention, which is app.py. So here what happens is, instead of Python app.py, here we are using Streamlit run app.py, so that we are saying that through Streamlit run this Python file and create a web application, a very basic web application. What this web application is going to do for now, it's just going to create a header with the title called cricket analysis. That's it. So when I run this, what happens is, it will automatically create a window, it will automatically opens your browser, but before that it will give you certain information, so you can now view your Streamlit app in your browser. So it's a web-based application, so any web-based application we typically view it in browsers only. So we are going to use Chrome itself for now, and it runs, any web application will usually run in certain ports. Since it is running locally in our machine, it is calling it as localhost 8501. Within your Wi-Fi network, if you want to share this application to someone, for example, you're running it in your machine, but you want to demo it in your friend's laptop, both are connected in the same Wi-Fi. In that case, they can access your application which is running in your machine in their browser using this link. So localhost is what we'll be using, because I'm running this application in my machine and I'm going to view this in my machine itself. So I will use, I can copy this, or I can just hover here. So it says control click. So you can just control click, or by default it will open it for you. So this is what we see here. By default it opens it for you, and all you see is a very blank page for now, and has a header called cricket analysis, and you see a deploy button which by default comes with Streamlit. If you would like to deploy this web application in public URL, you can use this option. There is a settings icon. So for example, here you have options. If I go to settings, you can say wide mode. So moment I say wide mode, it will utilize the entire screen space. Otherwise it will utilize only the center space. So moment I click on this wide mode, you see cricket analysis is coming somewhere on the top left here. You can also change the theme. So you can say I want a dark theme, or I want a light theme, or use the system settings. So these options are available for you. So for now I'll go with the light theme, and very blank web page we have created. So you can see the URL is localhost 8501. So that is the URL that you saw here. So whenever you would like to run this application, even if you by mistake close this, so you can go back here and just control click this icon, this link. It should open it for you. And then so by default we would like to keep it, so we need not go to settings always. And open it in wide mode. Instead we can create a small configuration which will help us to always open it in wide mode. So for that we just have to say st.set page config layout equal to wide, so that we set that here itself. Now if you go back to your application, just so moment you changed your file, we changed the Python file, right? So the Python file and this URL is kind of now linked. So moment I change something in my Python file, it will ask you the source file has changed. Should I rerun, or should I always rerun when there is a change in the source code? So I'm saying always rerun. So whenever I change the code, it will reflect here. So now by default, so even if I close this, and click on this link using control click, so by default it opens in wide mode, which is what we want to get started. And we can also set some title to the tab. So you can just say page title equal to cricket analysis here. So I've changed the file and I've saved it. So I can say click always rerun. So here you can see the title, the tab title. The tab name has changed to cricket analysis. Earlier it was app. Now it is cricket analysis. So, or you can just say a dashboard if both are conflicting. So you can just say dashboard just to see the difference. So you see dashboard here, which is the browser tab title. Cricket analysis is the application header that we have right now. So what we have done, we have created a very basic web application which is running locally in our machines, and it is running in a URL called localhost:8501. And what it does now, it is only displaying the header, which is cricket analysis. So quickly I will just display the data along with the title. Let's say I want to display the data, that is whatever data we created here, right, which is a data frame. Earlier we used print statement. So I'm going to say st.data frame. So it's a pandas data frame, right? So we have a dedicated function st.data frame, and I can just say data. You can use .head if you would like to use when you would like to show only first few rows. You can say .head 10 rows alone, you show it. So I'm doing this and I'm saving this, and if I go back, I can see this data coming here automatically with proper borders, and you'll have option to download the CSV file, or you'll have option to search it, or you'll have option to make it full screen. So a lot of different options will available. If you don't specify .head, if you keep it, if you pass the entire data, you'll get a scroll bar here. So later on you can look for paginations and all, but 55,000 rows, it displays it very easily, comfortably, without any issues. So what we have done, we have just created a simple web application which has a title and it has a data frame displayed in a proper tabular format. And we just learnt only two commands additionally. One is st.header and st.dataframe. In order to create this using any other frameworks, it will take a lot of time initially to set up your project, to create templates, and to create table tags, to create header tags, to create your HTML files and a lot of things. So if you go through Django or any other framework, but here in Streamlit, it's just 2 lines and single Python file. So one is the header and another is the data frame. Whatever tags that are required to display the data frame, Streamlit will take care of or take it for us. So we don't have to worry about creating. Ultimately, it will create a HTML file internally and serve that. But we don't see that HTML file directly. All we see that is this particular web page, nice web page to get started with. So slowly we will create sidebars and we will add a lot of menus in that, and then we'll play around with this data to create a dashboard.